My name is Carmina. I'm 43 years old now, and I live alone with my dogs. The truth is, I'm doing fine financially, thanks to the pension my husband left me. But in every other way, my life is hell. It all went wrong because of a decision I made when I was young. One rooted in envy. It started when I was about 20. I worked at a fabric store in downtown Tampico. I had lots of coworkers and friends there. I was happy, truly happy. I remember Yesenia. She was one of my best friends. We'd go to the movies together, grab dinner, walk along the beach. Our friendship felt unbreakable until the day I heard something that filled me with sadness and anger. My best friend had started dating a customer who came into the store all the time. She was dating Fernando Ramirez. He was handsome, attentive. He had this smile that could charm anyone. At first, the three of us hung out as friends. But little by little, a gap started forming between Yesenia and me because of that relationship. I grew more and more poisoned with jealousy and envy. Whenever I went looking for her, I'd pretend it was to see what they were up to. But really, it was to see him. Not her, him. The truth is, I started wanting her boyfriend in a twisted way. I fantasized about him. And slowly, that desire pushed my friend and me apart to the point where we barely spoke anymore. Both of us felt the resentment growing. She knew I wanted him. She saw the way I flirted whenever I got the chance. One afternoon, he showed up at the store with flowers for Jess. Like always, I walked over to say hello. She looked at me with pure contempt. And just to provoke her, I leaned in and kissed her boyfriend on the cheek. That was the final straw. In a fit of jealousy and rage, she slapped me. We started arguing, screaming at each other. Our coworkers had to pull us apart before it turned into a full-on fight right there in the store. Fernando looked at me coldly and told me he never wanted to see me again. He didn't want to talk to me, didn't want to know anything about me. He told me to stay away from them. That humiliation lit something dark inside me. I felt a deep hatred for Yesenia and an even stronger obsession with Fernando. Somehow, I had to break them up, no matter what it took. That's when my personal hell truly began. Around that time, a woman named Raquel started working at the store. We became friends. As the days passed, I opened up to her. I told her everything, especially what had happened with Yesenia. She said she already knew about all the drama, and she told me there were solutions, a way to separate them. But she warned me I'd have to be willing to do whatever it took to destroy that relationship. I didn't hesitate. I told her yes. I said I would cross any line to break them apart. I wanted them to suffer. I wanted him for myself. I wanted Fernando at my feet. The following weekend, she took me to see a woman who practiced witchcraft. She lived across the river, in the California neighborhood on the Veracruz side. When we arrived at her house, it looked like it could collapse at any moment. The walls were damp. Everything was filthy. It felt like the woman was some kind of hoarder. Piles of useless, dirty junk were stacked everywhere. My legs started trembling, but I forced myself to step across the doorway, ignoring the fear building inside me. I had to do whatever it took. Inside, it was even worse. The house was dark. It reeked of candles and rancid oil. Raquel called out the woman's name, and she emerged from the shadows, smoking a cigarette. She was an eerie old woman. White, tangled hair, ragged clothes. She wore a greasy, stained skirt that dragged along the floor. Her face was so deeply wrinkled it looked cracked. A few sticky strands of hair covered the left side of her face. She looked at us sideways. A crooked, contemptuous smile spread across her lips. When she opened her mouth, I saw teeth stained a sickly ochre, broken, rotten, nauseating. The old woman whispered a few words I couldn't understand. Raquel leaned close and told me she was asking us to sit down near a table. The seats were wooden produce crates. I didn't hesitate. I sat. Across from the table stood a large altar covered in dozens of candles and a life-size statue of the Holy Death, dressed entirely in black, draped in shiny fabric and lace. A skull presided over the altar. It looked disturbingly real. Too real. The empty eye socket seemed to study me. The old woman sat beside me. A wave of stench, stale urine and cigarette smoke hit my nose and clogged my throat. The smell was nauseating. I tried to stand up, panic rising in my chest, but her rough, calloused hands grabbed me and forced me back down. "Sit down, girl. What do you want?" she rasped. At least this time I understood her. I froze. I didn't know what to say. "Doña Mech, my friend is here because she needs help with a job," Raquel explained, her voice shaky. The old woman pulled out a deck of cards and laid them on the table. She took a swig from a bottle of cheap liquor, coughed, then took another drag from her cigarette. She left it hanging from her lips as she shuffled the cards. One by one, she spread them out, studying them carefully, lifting the cigarette between her fingers for another slow inhale. "Good. Very good. I already know why you're here. I'll help you. But don't you go acting stupid later and ignore what I tell you. You hear me, girl? Is that clear?" She stared at me. That broken smile crept back across her face. With effort, she stood up and pulled out a small notebook from a drawer beneath the altar. She wrote for a long time, tore out several pages, then bowed slightly before the statue of the Holy Death. "My child, help this devoted follower of yours obtain what she desires most. By the powers of the earth, by the presence of fire, by the breath of air, by the virtue of water," she invoked and conjured the Holy Death. Every word came from her cracked, whispering mouth. After a long silence, she placed the papers in my hands and told me to do everything written on them. Everything. Otherwise, there would be serious consequences. That was all. She stepped out into the yard and disappeared among the piles of trash without another word. "What now, Tonita?" Raquel asked softly. She told me we had to leave some money in a small container by the entrance. I pulled out a few bills and dropped them in. Then we left. Quickly. On the way back to downtown Tampico, I read the papers. It was some kind of list, written in messy handwriting, full of spelling mistakes. It described a ritual that had to be performed during a full moon. Without hesitation, I prepared myself. I had to gather several esoteric items, liquids, powders, and perform different rituals to separate a couple. But most important of all, I had to get a red statue of the Holy Death, holding a heart in her hand, and build her an altar. In that moment, if I truly wanted what I desired most, I would become her follower. And I did. Little by little, I gathered everything on the list. The first step was to get close to Fernando and Yesenia again. Keep things cordial. That was the hardest part. I had to talk to them again, earn their trust, start from scratch. One day, when I saw them walking together, I approached them. I apologized for my behavior and told them I wanted us to be friends again. They saw what they believed was sincerity in my words, and they agreed. That same night, after work, we went to the movies and out to dinner, sealing what looked like the return of our beautiful friendship. Days passed, and I began performing the rituals. Every night, I wrote down my wish to separate them. I burned the paper with a black candle, and as it turned to ash, I repeated the same words over and over. In the name of Asmodeus, I release this pestilence by his power and his name. Broken and unhappy hearts shall be Fernando and Yesenia. Separate paths they will walk, each following their own destiny, far from one another. The love that once bloomed will burn in this fire. As I repeated the words, heat would rise up my spine. I felt happy. I felt like I was succeeding. I wanted them to become enemies. I blew the ashes into the wind and whispered, "So it shall be. So it shall be." When the ritual ended, I would lie down in bed, imagining them suffering, imagining her leaving him, imagining him beside me in my bed, helping me, belonging to me, finally mine. As the days went by, I grew closer and closer to Fernando, without Yesenia even noticing. Since I had a better body than her, I started dressing more provocatively to catch Fernando's attention. More than once, I caught him stealing glances at me, desire written all over his face. I felt like a goddess. I felt powerful. Everything was unfolding exactly as I had planned. Exactly. But one day, I found out they were planning to get married. That sent me into a rage. It couldn't be happening. Everything had been going perfectly. According to my plan, they couldn't get married. If that happened, every single one of my efforts would be wasted. Still, I didn't lose focus. I stuck to my plan. I kept going. They were not going to get married. The next step was to make him drink a potion, specially prepared to make him fall in love with me. So I made it. Over the course of one long night. Tequila, musk, cinnamon, salt, and a few drops of blood from my period, all mixed together while I begged the holy death to help me. I also had to burn a pair of underwear, wrap his photograph in it, and sprinkle some of the ashes into the drink. It was easy to get Fernando to drink it. I even noticed he seemed to enjoy it. The effects showed up just a few days later. He started looking for me. Any excuse would do. To me, that was total victory. Fernando was already at my feet. One night, while I was performing the enchantment, someone knocked insistently at my door. When I went to check, I was surprised to see it was Fernando. I quickly threw on a robe, fixed my hair, put on some lipstick, and went to greet him. "Good evening, Carmina. Can I come in?" he asked hesitantly. "Of course. It's your house, too." "Come in," I replied. He sat down on the couch. He looked uneasy, tired. It didn't take long to start talking. He said he felt guilty for coming, but he needed to tell me something important, something that couldn't wait. He was going to marry Yesenia. He wanted everything to be clear. No misunderstandings. He had come to ask me to stay away from them. Bored by his request, I gave him a smug smile. I lifted my legs onto the coffee table and noticed the way his gaze lingered on my thigh. "Are you sure you want me to stay away?" I asked boldly. In that exact moment, he stood up and moved toward the door to leave. But I stepped in front of him, blocking the exit. We locked eyes. He started kissing me fiercely, almost angrily. I was savoring my triumph when, without warning, the sound of a neighbor opening her door snapped us back to reality. We had to stop. He pulled away abruptly and tried to leave. I tried to pull him back inside, but I couldn't. He left. My heart was racing. A wave of overwhelming joy ran through my body. He would finally be mine. No, he already was. I would do whatever I wanted with him. Then came their joint bachelor and bachelorette party. Almost everyone from the store was there to wish them well. That night, I dressed as provocatively as I possibly could to draw Fernando's attention. And it worked. We exchanged glances throughout the entire party. At one point, I went to the bathroom in one of the bedrooms. I fixed my makeup and stepped out. The room was dark, but he was standing right there in front of me. Before I could say anything, Fernando grabbed me by the waist and started kissing me. From that moment on, everything happened fast. Lust drove him to move faster and faster. I felt pleasure. I could tell he did too. Still, a part of me knew someone could walk in at any moment. I wanted to warn him. I meant to say it, but I didn't. I didn't stop him. I even urged him on. The sound of the door opening brought us back to reality. My heart felt like it was going to burst out of my chest. He looked nervous, but the coworker who walked in was so drunk he didn't notice a thing. I mechanically walked out of the room. I felt dazed. We'd been interrupted at the most satisfying moment. When I returned to the party, I was completely unsettled. Frustrated beyond words, I decided to leave. I went home, showered, and went to bed. It must have been early morning when someone knocked at my door. I had just gotten out of the shower and was wrapped in a towel. It was Fernando, drunk. Without hesitation, I let him in. We didn't say a word. We spent the night together, and after that night, he came to see me every evening, secretly. Fernando was finally at my feet. I had him under my control in that world of nighttime pleasure and secrecy I gave him each night. The next step was for him to leave Yesenia, and without even planning it, one afternoon it happened. I went to visit her to drop off some fabric she needed for her wedding dress. We were flipping through magazine designs while I thought about her fiancé. Suddenly, she stood up and said she urgently had to run to the store for some hairpieces. I needed to stay behind to wait for the catering guy to drop something off. I don't even remember what, so I stayed. To pass the time, I turned on the TV. Then the door opened. It was Fernando. He took me to the bedroom, where we started kissing. While it was happening, I noticed Yesenia walking in. I saw the look of disgust and disappointment on her face when she saw us. I smiled. Of course I did. She ended the engagement, and Fernando left with me. From that moment on, things started to get strange. I kept dreaming about the holy death. I would see her standing at the foot of my bed, that eyeless skull and cold smile fixed on me. She pointed at me. She wanted something from me, but I didn't know what. In my dreams, I also saw Yesenia suffering, crying, pale, lost in what looked like a long, endless hallway. I was so terrified that I stopped using the altar, the offerings, everything. One afternoon, I gathered it all up and threw it in the trash. I had already gotten what I wanted. There was no reason to keep going. That decision was a grave mistake. After I got rid of the altar, everything started going wrong. I was fired when my bosses found out about my situation with Fernando. He was no longer welcomed as a customer, and ended up losing his job too. I began to lose interest in him. Our intimate life started to fade. His hair began falling out. He gained a lot of weight. Desire slowly turned into disgust, and the arguments began. I wanted to throw him out of my house, but he was obsessed with me. When I finally managed to get rid of him, he started stalking me, watching my every move. There were several times when men I was dating beat him up because of the scenes he caused in the middle of the street. Somewhere deep down, I felt guilty for everything I had done. But I had already gotten what I wanted. I didn't want him anymore. My rejection and his desperation drove him insane. He stabbed a man I was dating. When the police took him away, I swear I didn't understand what had happened to him. He had lost his mind. He swore I would never belong to anyone else. I never saw him again. Later, I heard he died in prison during a riot. Right there. That's where he died. At first, it seemed like things were getting better. The bad streak was fading. But I began to notice that none of the men I dated satisfied me. I felt empty. I even tried relationships with women, without success. Something was wrong with me. What was happening to me? For some reason, nothing, absolutely nothing, made me happy. That's when I started thinking that everything I had done must have had consequences. The men who came into my life never lasted more than a week. Happiness became a strange word to me. Eventually, I left Tampico and moved to Torreon, where my family was from. But nothing changed. I was about 32 when I met the man who would become my husband. I married him because I wanted a child. But my marriage was a nightmare. Monotonous. Routine. My husband was already much older. We barely had intimacy. He began to feel disgust toward me. And to complete the picture, I was diagnosed with infertility. I would never be able to have children. When I heard that news, my world collapsed. I asked for forgiveness, but I didn't even know from whom. I felt like a hypocrite, just thinking that anyone could forgive everything I had done. So I resigned myself. I accepted my fate. My bad luck didn't end there. Not long after, I was told that my husband had died in a train derailment. I was completely alone. No hope of rebuilding my life. Every time I tried, men simply drifted away. Even now, I still dream of the holy death visiting me at night. Every single night. I see myself reflected in her cold, empty eye sockets. And sometimes, during the day, I catch a glimpse of her from the corner of my eye, staring at me, laughing with that broken smile. I can't stop thinking about the last sentence I read in the witch's instructions. When you make a deal with the holy death, it's forever. I imagine her mocking me with that disgusting grin. Years later, I learned that Yesenia had died. I don't know if it was because of her breakup with Fernando, or for some other reason. There are nights when I can see her among the shadows of my house, staring at me with reproach and hatred, waiting for the moment she can have me in the afterlife, waiting to take revenge. I don't ask for forgiveness. That would be hypocritical. I enjoyed it while it lasted, but it wasn't worth it. Not at all. And I hope this serves as a warning to anyone who reads my story. I hope you don't judge me. But if you do, remember, every one of us has a tail that can be stepped on. We've all sinned for something.